So welcome anyone who's watching this. One of the reasons we'll do that is we'll put this link that you can share with any other alumni you would like to say, hey, if you want to hear what's going on and you weren't able to spend that Friday afternoon with us, take a look at the recording. So we will make it available to you. And the slides will be available on our strategic planning website that I believe Ethan already gave it access to. So here we go. Everybody can see my screen okay, I'm assuming. Thank you, Ethan. All right. So what are the goals for this particular meeting with you? Number one, as I mentioned, to provide an overview of strategic planning efforts, including the structure, timing, responsibilities, and process. Number two is to share preliminary findings related primarily to the top 3 priorities that have surfaced, as well as the supporting objectives for each priority. And then finally, to give an open forum to you, again, using a QR code, hopefully your phone or a computer, to actually have you input your ideas about detailed plans for initiatives to move us forward. So this project overview section is about timing, roles, responsibilities, and strategy. So our original scope coming in, it's increased a little bit here and there since we've started. But we were here basically to build on your 200 years of success and get involved with the long-term strategic planning for the institution. There's been work done in strategic planning over last September in particular, but even before that, going back to last year. And so we were brought in to facilitate feedback on what's been done thus far and formally channel that back to the leadership team. And then to work with the leadership team to craft a very compelling and exciting vision for the long-term future, really looking at 2035 as your 200-year celebration to prepare for 200 more years. But the specific strategic planning period, as you know from your experience, is probably going to be no more than a 3-year period. So we're going to be looking at a 3-year strategic plan, but we will have some aspirations of what needs to happen even beyond that. So that would be the visioning portion of this project. And we just started in January, so we're getting close to finishing with feedback. This is part of that process as well. And then we'll be putting together the strategy. The SWOT is essentially finished. We'll get some reactions from you, and you probably have participated via the SWOT survey. We'll get the Titan of the mission, vision, and values, and then get details about the initiatives and put some numbers behind it and get timing. So that is essentially the plan. Traditional strategic planning. I love strategy. I love higher education. Ever since my father got me introduced to it, he was a president of a community college in Virginia. So I'm a big fan of higher ed and the purpose of higher ed. Terrific board of trustees and cabinet who are providing oversight and leadership, very engaged, having a lot of meetings. And, I'm very impressed with the involvement and the care of both of those groups. The task force meets weekly. It's a nice mix of board members and cabinet members, and we facilitate those meetings, looking at research, analyzing findings, generating draft statements and implementation plan. The AGB team, our team of 2 undergraduates and a recently graduated MBA and me, are focused on research, analysis, project management, slides, communications, etc. One of the things they've been doing a lot of is taking your inputs and content coding them. So putting them into categories and having quotes that we share in a systematic way with the task force and the planning committee. And the planning committee is a very important structure of Marietta. I believe even written into the Constitution or the bylaws, and it's a nice mix of board and cabinet, key administration, and students all working together. And they're meeting, I believe, 7 or 8 times. And so we're helping provide them with data and making them responsible really for the implementation plan. So they're going to be taking inputs that you'll give us and other groups, as well as their own thoughts, prioritizing initiatives, putting ROI estimates, and helping craft the plan that's going to transform Marietta for the future. So a lot of activity on campus related to this, building off of what's been done in the past. Here's our timeline. We're sort of right in the middle there, just finishing up our town hall meetings. We'll continue with planning committee meetings, and the task force meetings go every week and all the way through March. And into April, we'll start finalizing the plans. We will circle back, as I mentioned, toward the end of April and have another alumni. We have these 4 town hall meetings. We'll have another round of those before we go final with the plan and present it to the board in May. I'm a huge fan of John Cotter, the famous Harvard marketing professor, for his change management philosophies of all things. And so these are some principles we're trying to employ here. The best way to make change really take place, especially, you might know this, in an inert organization like an academic institution. Let's face it, higher ed is not as nimble as traditional industries that you may work in. And that's across the board. I mean, there are exceptions, but the vast majority are what people would call slow to change. And so when you talk about change management strategy, these are the first big steps. Create a sense of urgency, build a guiding coalition, and form a strategic vision. And all of those are on our to-do list for this semester. So the way you do the sense of urgency is you do a full-blown SWOT. You understand the changes macro. You identify what's happening on our campus. You have a lot of dialogue with you through surveys, through I've never seen a name coming in that's called "We're Late." That is got to be a first for me. I can't wait to see who this person is. So phase 1 is well underway. Phase 2 is underway as well, with the task force and the planning committee, plus the cabinet and plus the board being engaged. I mean, you've got a really active guiding coalition. And then we'll be producing this clear strategic vision I'll describe today. And then all of that kind of feeds in. If you look to the left, the way you continue the implementation is you got to remove barriers from action, generate short-term wins, sustain acceleration, and then institute the change and keep it rolling. So this is the change management philosophy. And I apologize in advance if I sound too much like a professor today. I'm really just trying to explain the methodologies and the tools that we're using on campus right now to facilitate this project. Here's the strategy professor coming out. Why even do strategic planning? Well, I mean, these statements should guide decision-making. They should also make people excited internally and externally to an organization. So the mission statement shouldn't be a long statement that no one knows. It should be a really succinct statement that makes people proud. One of the big things we need to focus on is continued differentiation and telling the story of Marietta as to why people would want to come here, whether it's to work here or to come as a student or to send their child here. It should make you proud. The vision statement has to be really clear, future state. We're not there yet, but we're excited to get there. And then the values describe, the sense of belonging on campus. What is it that we articulate that if you come to Marietta, you should know this. You put those things together, Peter Drucker would suggest on a t-shirt, it has to be that concise. And then that should feed the priorities, objectives, and initiatives. And that's where you all fit in, because we're going to be sharing the mission, vision, and values a little bit more in phase 2. But that's also going to feed the big things that need to be done on campus in terms of the priorities for change, the objectives within the priorities, and then the initiatives within the objectives. I wrote a paper, I couldn't find a good article that said, hey, what's in strategy? So my article suggests that this should be addressed by strategy. We should be clear to you and to all constituents what our position, priorities, payments, performance. So this should all be transparent and well-known and tracked. The position, what's unique about us, where are we headed exactly, the things I just described. And then we ought to have no more than 3 top enterprise level priorities. So if you all ask Bill, what are you all working on? He says, we're working on these 3 things. Now, of course, we're doing teaching and education and mentoring and operations, but we don't talk about them at the strategic level. Those are operational activities that are taking place, and they're doing a good job at that. The strategy is about how we're changing and how we're moving and what's important for our future positioning. So what's critical for success? This is where I would love your ideas. BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. We want to shoot big and don't feel that something's too big of a suggestion when we get toward the end of this. We really want to hear some ideas that will stretch us. Let me give you an example. Merge with another institution, acquire another institution, launch enough online programs that within 10 years, 50% of our students are online. Now I'm making these up, but that's the kind of, those are big moves, double our advertising budget. Some of these will require resources and some won't, but we want to hear what you think in terms of BHAGs. Strategy should also tell us what not to do. We can't do everything. We can't offer all the programs that we would like to, because every one of those costs money to maintain and to support. So we've got to be careful about programs we offer, what kind of space we're in. We have to have an operating model that is sustainable. So strategy should also help us say no to things. That should also feed right into the resources. How much do we have to spend? What's our budget? And that's something that from the short term, the leadership team is paying a lot of attention right now in terms of managing the budget to get out of operating deficits, to position you, because they're not sustainable in the future. The last one is performance metrics. What are the few things that we can use in terms of, a dashboard to say we're making progress, we're moving forward, and then what's our return, and then how do we feed that back in? Usually about a 3-year period is how long a strategy will last. A little more nomenclature. This will be important when we get to the end of this presentation. When we ask you for your inputs, we're going to be asking you about initiatives. So we've got some draft priorities that the teams have all created, the survey has validated, and then also some objectives. And now within each objective, in other words, something you want to accomplish over the next 3 years, we need some inputs about how do we get that done? What kind of barriers might we have? And that's where we're going to ask you at the end to give us ideas. Those are going to be within the topic of objectives. What's everybody talking about in higher ed these days? These are the priorities that we need to put some brain power to. How do we adjust our position to be truly unique? How are we different from any other small private in the area, even beyond just Ohio? We also need to change our products. We cannot stay, this economic model is challenging to impossible. A small liberal arts residential program only. The demographics suggest that the number of students who want that are going down 15% on a macro basis over the next 10 years. So if our enrollments are already down, and COVID threw a curveball at us too. But to just bank on that and with our infrastructure is almost impossible, because the economics of that model with the declining high school graduate student for that product, no matter how much differentiation you have, is going to be really tough to maintain. So we've got to put real energy into new products. That means non-degrees, things we're not usually doing before, certificates, micro-credentials. It also means more online, because the adult population wants education, and some of them can only get it through online. So these are some of the topics we'll talk about in terms of product offerings. Partnerships, we should not think we have to go at this alone. We should be partnering with, we just talked about this with the board. We should partner with the local and state government. We should partner with major employers. We should be talking to Intel all the time. What do you need over the next few years for your big investment in the state of Ohio? What can we uniquely provide you in terms of graduates? What kind of certificate programs and exec ed do you need for your employees? Those are really important conversations. Your hospitals, I think I understand that there are 3 hospitals in a relatively close proximity to Marietta. How do we better connect with them in terms of PA, growing our nursing program, things like that? So how do we really need to partner also with other institutions to offer joint degrees. And then finally, you need to keep an eye on profitability. You've got to manage the cash, and you've got to look in terms of program P&L, profit and loss. The days of just increasing tuition 3 to 5% a year and just keeping the same base we have because we know we'll get in more enrollments are over. So that this is a shakeup. This is happening all through higher ed. 30% of the institutions in higher ed right now have a negative operating margin. 30%. You're reading articles every day about an institution that's making big changes in terms of its employee base, changing its partnerships. Some of them are closing. Now you're not on that path because you're the envy of many institutions because of the size of your endowment, the success of your fundraising, the power of your alumni group, the great product you offer. But I'm telling you, it's still a time for change. And so profitability and cash flow and margin has to be discussed on a regular basis and managed. Here's just an example of what we might be creating. I did this for a webinar, and I think one of the articles I wrote, but it's, this is the kind of clarity we want to try to get to. Mission, vision, values, and these 3 priorities. I call it strategy on 1 page. And then there's drill downs, of course, and I'll show that on the next slide. But, this made up Midwest small public institution, creating leaders to impact society, become the university that students call home is their vision. student-focused equity and diversity outcomes and accountability. Some of these may resonate with you, quite frankly. And when you look at this first priority, I promise I did this well before I even met Marietta, but this is for my made-up institution, a priority around a compelling vision around student success, personalized education, and athletics. It's really ironic because those are that feels very much like a priority for us. Priority 2, grow research in high-impact disciplines. And number 3 is to expand external partnerships. And we're not a research institution, but these are, and then so each one of those priorities, this again is just an illustration. I won't go deep into this. Each one of those priorities across the top, each has its a set of 3 objectives over the next 3 years. And then you have initiatives to get it done. And that initiative space is the kind of thing I'm going to ask you for advice on. So you know, you can steal these too. I should probably put this up. I didn't think about that in earlier town halls. But you know, these are legitimate ideas that I came up with in my head based on a number of past projects I've done. But some of them might make sense for us as well. So, but that's the kind of stuff we have to get to. We haven't got that far. We're working with the task force and the planning committee to start moving toward that. We're still working on the draft objectives and putting some metrics on them this next time. And then by the end of the semester, we're going to have this filled out for Marietta. The other thing that's very important in a good strategic plan is to tie resources to it. Some of those initiatives cost money and some don't. We need to have a nice spreadsheet that explains exactly what the expenses and the anticipated revenue would be for each initiative. And this is hard work. If any of you have done a strategic plan and you've gone to this level, and it's not often done, quite frankly, in higher ed. There are not many institutions that have a very robust multi-year strategic plan associated with revenue and budget. So, but we're going to have that because that's going to be necessary to navigate these rough waters. And we put those together. You can see it's in each of the years we stack the investments. In this particular plan, which might not be that unrealistic to your plan, there wasn't much to invest. Actually, on my hypothesis for Marietta, you got to make a little more investment in year 1 because you have to get some revenue in the door pretty quickly. So we're going to probably come up with some proposals to launch some certificate programs that can generate revenue within a year, but that'll cost some money in year 1. So you might have a little more in year 1, maybe a little less in year 2. But you know, this again is part of our process to try to figure out first we got to figure out what needs to be done, and then we tie numbers to it. All right, I'm going pretty fast. If anybody has any clarifying questions, feel free to throw it into chat, and Ethan will keep me posted, or Tom, if I'm missing something. But I hope that gives you a sense of the objectives of the strategic planning effort, the process underway, and how people fit in, and how important it is to get input from everyone like you as well. Everybody good? Thumbs up to move on? Great. Thank you. Susan, I apologize to you. I think you had to listen to the other one and this one. Isn't it right? Is it Susan or Kay, or who's?
It's Susan J.
Susan
Susan
J.
or J.
Do they call you Jay? Okay.
They call me J.
I remember hearing that, but I don't see it on your name there. So we're glad to have you. I think you were on the phone last time.
Yes. It's even better the second time, Paul.
Oh, really? Well, feel free to send this link to any other alumni who want to get a glass of wine this weekend and listen to Paul pontificate on strategy for institutions and Marietta's future. But I'm glad you said it's better. All right. So here's what we call the storyline. So every time we start a project, we spend a few weeks just reviewing data, doing benchmarking, getting up to speed. And this is what we have developed in terms of a view of what's happening. And you can tell us if it's accurate or not. It seems to have resonated with most of the folks. You are a highly regarded liberal arts institution, very proud of 185 years. You're going to be looking at 200 years very soon, and then you want to do another 200. That's called the situation. The complication is macro trends are not good for higher ed. Your traditional high school graduates are on a cliff. And I can show you slides on that, but it's on a downward trend, and it's been on a downward trend, especially in the Midwest. Not only are the number of students graduating, families are moving south and west. So that's gonna cause. I mean, in a business terms, your target market is shrinking, and there's just you You can't change that. That's a macro force. You'll just have to figure out how you adjust to that. The other thing is expectations are different. They want different majors. They might appreciate liberal arts, but I'm telling you, they need a connection to careers too. So it can't be, I'm just doing liberal arts. You have to get them thinking about careers earlier and give them resources to explore careers that would appeal to them. Research shows that more active career planning and engagement in the first year of college, I did a research study on this, increases retention, graduation, and post-employment income. So that is a really important lever for us to examine. And then financial stress for individuals, even though last year was a boom for the stock market, there's a lot of stress for a lot of families. So don't underestimate that. There's also a huge financial stress throughout higher ed. Marietta is heavily tuition dependent, and you're not getting, UNC gets it's 20 to 30% of their budget from the state. Here you go. Here's money. You don't have that. You are really contingent upon the numbers of students coming in, and that's what your model has been built on, in a higher number traditionally. You also have discounting has grown significantly. Strategically, whether it's for sports scholarships or providing access to students who couldn't make it, you're up past 75% on discounting. Look, that means you're right at, you only get a 30% net to try to cover your costs. I mean, that's a big deal. Discounting used to be closer to 50% on average. And again, you're not the only institution doing this. This is happening a lot. So you've done it to keep up with the competition, but that makes your cash flow hard. In fact, you've had deficits for the past 3 years. And there might have been like 1 to 2 million in 19, and then 11 million in 20, and then shrunk down to closer to 5 or 6 million. But that's reflective of a $7 million investment over 2 of those years from the federal government money. So, I told you the pressure is hard, and your college has taken the approach of, we're going to take care of our people. So while many institutions have done layoffs and furloughs and faculty reductions, that has not happened here. But the end result is your infrastructure is bigger than your revenue base. And all of you are in industry, I think. I don't know all your backgrounds, but you know that you've got to get enough revenue and net revenue to cover your costs. So there's some change that has to take place. And that's why we're here, to brainstorm the best kind of transformation that sets you up for success. Let me also give you one of my philosophies, and I think it's shared by the Marietta management team. You can't cut your way to success. So you can't just have a strategy that says, we're going to cut over the next 3 years. What you've got to do is invest in growth. You got to find areas that could increase enrollments, new programs, new online, these things, but that's not going to be free. So we're going to have the courage to have some financial strategic investment money. And we want to involve the community on campus to help identify the best place to put that money. Revenues are decreasing, expenses continue to rise. Administrative spend from our early benchmarking looks like it's lower than your peers. Now we're continuing that. And Ethan, make a note, because I think we've got a more robust set of peers than we did our first analysis. I want to continue to drill down to competitors to find out exactly where in administration there might be some opportunities. But your administrative spend compared to peers of our first cut analysis suggested that you were below that, but your instructional cost is high. And this is like a triangulation of that. Your student to faculty ratio is the lowest of all your peers. You're down to 8 to 1. And I remember being at St. Francis University on the board, and the CFO put a chart up one time, and it showed the student faculty ratio going from 20 to 1 to 10 to 1 over a 10-year period. And I raised my hand and I said, hey, red flag here. Did we strategically try to do that? Or are we just giving more faculty positions with declining enrollments? And they didn't like that question. But that 8 to 1, that's really hard. Now you could say, well, that's a positive. It's more personal delivery, but that's a unbelievably hard economic model. So when your peers, you might want to be targeting more like 12 or even 16 to 1. So that means that you would have to have a shift, of course, in the number of faculty and or the number of students. So that's got to be on the table. The cabinet's working on short-term financial management. That's clearly on the priority list of them. You are going to do fine. You're going to weather the storm. The key is do it in a positive way with your community, with your alumni, and make sure you launch the right kinds of things for today's world. AGB is here to help with that process. We're booked to help through May. If it determines there's something more we can do, I'm not going anywhere. I'm coming in May to visit in person, and I really feel vested that this is a great opportunity, and it's going to take some work, but you have a bright future. All right. I apologize if that went on a little too long, but that's kind of the key story. It's summarized here. This is essentially our data and our analysis. We have, I don't know, over 100 slides of data that I won't bore you with, but it led to these conclusions. We also have had extensive surveys and great response rates of over 20%, and 60% of the faculty. They're very engaged in this. The strengths and weaknesses, you probably have heard of a SWOT analysis. The strengths and weaknesses are internal, within our control, and opportunities and threats are external, beyond our control, but should be reflected in our strategy. Think of this as a checklist for our strategy. And Leslie, you must be so bored of hearing me say this. You've been in the board retreat, you've been in the task force, you've been in the planning committee, and you've had to hear me do all 4 town halls. So you could probably, but anyway, the strengths are things we need to leverage. And I need to keep repeating this. Some people think like, oh, I don't see myself in the new priorities. Well, maybe you're doing fine. If you're doing well, we don't need to change you. But these are things we want to continue to leverage. A highly regarded liberal arts education, personalized, so we don't want to ditch that. Certain programs that have really good reputations, so a diverse offering, maybe a little too diverse, but co-curricular student experience, you got a safe, beautiful campus, and a robust athletic programs. Bill likes to remind me that your basketball program's doing much better than UNC. And so we might be lucky if we make the tournament. So anyway, so these are good things that we need to continue to leverage, and we need to tell better in marketing and make sure it resonates with people. The weaknesses within our control, well, the vision and execution has been highlighted in the surveys. We're trying to address that through this process. So if we don't do that, that's my fault. So that plus your leadership team, plus the board, plus your inputs, we are going to address that. We're going to have a clear vision, execution plan. We're trying to nip any reluctance to change in the bud through the process. We will have to address admissions. We're going to be more specific and strategic about the segments we target. We might have to invest more in that particular bucket. And we've got to solve for the financials. We've got to get to a balanced budget within a few years. That's not going to happen overnight, but we need to make the changes. And as I mentioned, your team is hard at work at that right now. So those are strengths and weaknesses. And I always push people to prioritize. We had more, but we had to say these are the biggest ones that are on our radar screen. On the opportunities and threats, I'll go to threats next. Changing student demographics and populations, I told you about that one already. And many of them prefer online or a hybrid. Students these days want to have an option to do online. They might even want to go abroad and keep taking a Marietta class. You might be able to do online classes for high school students at Marietta that entices them to come with a more clear and easy transfer process from community colleges. I'm making these things up. Insufficient diversity. There's a lot of pressure for diversity to change both composition, but also make it more welcoming to all segments. And then the last one is, let's face it, it's a price sensitive market. Some students prospective students don't even apply because they just are afraid that high tuition costs, they don't really know how the discount rates work. So thinking about messaging that, changing your strategies for certain segments that make it more clear and obvious, and just being aware of that in terms of a pricing strategy have to be on our radar. The good news things we probably are going to put energy and money into, one is we got to have some new programs. We've got to grow online. We got to grow graduate programs. We got to have things like the new Earth, Energy, and Environment that's focused on alternative energy. These are things that the market is demanding, and they can fit with our culture. So we just got to make sure we do it right. We need strong alumni relations. Here's where you enter. Can you imagine if we increase your opportunity to help this turnaround, to really help us with admissions, to help us assign some alumni to our teams to figure out how to transform. You've already been very active in fundraising, just as Leslie said. Certainly everyone appreciates that. But this is, someone in the last meeting said, time, talent, and treasure. So the treasure would be the giving. The talent is what you each offer individually, and the time is just helping us through it with your volunteer time. We have a unique structure with the loyalty to undergraduate programs compared to the rest of the world. So let's leverage that as an asset. And then lastly is community location. If it's a real asset, it still also requires some investment. We've heard from students about places to make investments. We need a new student center. We're going to need new academic buildings, similar to the Earth, Energy, and Environment. What if we double the size of our PA and nursing programs? Where are we going to put them? We might have to acquire new space. Maybe we go across the river. I'm making all these things up, but this is the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about and exploring through this process. So that's the SWOT analysis. We've had good response rate in surveys. Ethan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of these items have received at least a 60% or higher level of a strongly agree or agree in our surveys. Of course, there are some that are a little bit lower. Some are up to 80, 83%. And for me, who has done a lot of these projects, that's a pretty high level of agreement. So it seems to be that we've sort of got the basics out here.
Yeah, Paul, I agree. And before you move on, I think Tim Byers had a good question in the chat, if you want to take a look at that.
I do. I see Mary Ann's comments. We have offered and offered to help and hear crickets. Oh my goodness, that's going to change. That you are going to be on. You're on the SWOT, which means you're going to be in the initiatives. So I'm glad to hear there's energy. Tim says 8 to 1 across the entire campus. Absolutely not. Well, yes, it is. It's an average of your entire campus. There's a wide range within departments that we're starting to dig into. And I believe Janet will be doing more of this research to look both at departments as well as majors, because and some require small student ratios, like a nursing program, probably PA, but others don't have that requirement. They have to have a small clinical rotation rate and some things like that. So there are some reasons, but you can also benchmark programs against other programs that are similar to them. So there are outliers that are throwing that program off, those numbers off. And sometimes it's by the very nature of the type of programs they have, but also it's by design that within our control. Tenure track adjunct. I think somebody might be able to help me. I just got that recently. Ethan might be able to dig that up. I feel like you're about 60% tenure and tenure track and maybe 40% adjunct. Am I ballpark right?
Maybe a little high on the tenure, but
yeah, tenure and Ethan, see if you can track that down. That was in our planning committee deck. It was in the appendix. Leslie really liked that slide, I think, and so we put that one back in there. We'll track that down and get that to you. But that is an important thing. It's hard to make changes to tenured faculty. So you have a couple options with that. You can do early retirements if somebody wants to. You can do voluntary retirements. There have been some universities and colleges who do what's called exigency, which means they get approval to actually discontinue a tenure arrangement if it's just causing the institution to be not financially stable. So I'm not part of that team at this moment, trying to help sort through the short term, but these will be some of the things that a team will be thinking about in terms of the right composition. But there's no doubt your infrastructure was built for more students than you have. And until we have a few years to build up the base with certain strategies and reallocate certain resources, it's going to be tough. So there are going to be some tough challenges in the short term that need to be resolved. Why is our tuition what it is? That's a good question. There are tuition strategies. I remember when I was at St. Francis, I said, why don't we drop our tuition, by 50% and dramatically increase the number of people who apply? Well, you can't do that because then you're perceived as a lower quality offering. And, so it's not easy, but let's make sure, Ethan, in our notes that we are going to pursue the topic of pricing strategies. There is, it's a really good point, because when we identify increasing price sensitivity, if we were to drop the theory of economics would suggest that would have a very positive corresponding increase in applicants, because price sensitive means when you move down, they are more inclined to act. If you stay up, they're more inclined not to act. So this is something we should, and Leslie, I don't know if pricing has ever been discussed at the board level, shifts in pricing strategies.
Grant, one of our former chairs, may have more history than I have, but it's something to definitely consider, because that model has definitely shifted very quickly in the net tuition.
Yeah, I don't recollect any specific discussions. I see Dale's on. He may also, I mean, it's basically been pricing going to try to cover costs and then shifting it with the discount rate, and which is kind of a less than forward looking, or less than optimal way to set your pricing.
Well, a good point. So whoever put that in there, let's make sure we're about to change gears now, and I'm going to let you put your inputs to us. Please put both of those comments in, and any other comments, because somebody else wrote, what about internship programs? Absolutely. How about this initiative? 100% internships and co-ops, 100%. So we make a commitment, and we go to all of our alumni and say, if you come to Marietta, within your first 2 years, we will get you real experience. And we can only do that with our alumni pitching in and giving these positions. I think that's an exciting proposition. I think that could be a differentiator. Okay, so here's where we landed, and get your phones ready or your computers ready, because you're not here just to listen. You're actually here to give us some ideas that you've already started with. But these are the top 3 priorities, the draft priorities and the draft objectives. So support the students of today, meet the academic challenges tomorrow, and create the campus of the future. And compliments to the board for coming up with the language. And what we did in preparation for the board meeting was we took all the ideas that were in the strategic plan document. We tried to put them around themes, and these rose to the top. So if somebody says, Bill, what's the top priorities right now? Well, we're taking care of our students right now, and we're changing our academic programs to be ready for tomorrow. And we're going to create a campus that's really different than it looks today. That's what we're focused on. And we're thinking about a 3-year window. We're going to make progress on all 3 of these priorities. There's probably something that's like, I guess it's not in here specifically. We need to add this, Ethan, put it in our notes, but underneath of it, we need to remember to put the values. So that's how we do it. Plus, we need to put something else, a discipline around fiscal management. So we need to put that on this, because it's doing these things with a lens toward our values and also a balanced budget, so to speak. So a fiscal budget, disciplined fiscal budget. So we'll add that to the slide from now on, just hit me. But each of these 3 bullets are called objectives. So we want to increase prospective student awareness, improve student experience, and prepare students for a changing world. Well, okay, so what's next? We're going to ask you to do, and the next slide has this QR code, or we'll put the link in chat. We're going to ask you for each of these objectives within these priorities to give us some more ideas, some more specific things to do. Some of the stuff you already said, like for prepare students for a changing world, put in require mandatory internships in your first 2 years. That is a perfect suggestion that has not come up, by the way. That's why I'm glad we're dealing with you all. So we need to hear more of those kind of great ideas. What we're going to be doing with our teams on campus is put them all into a list, make it MECE, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, and then go through a prioritization exercise based on impact. So you can see there are 3 objectives in each of these buckets. So we're going to ask you to think, and by the way, I forgot to mention this. If you can't think of something for one, just skip to the next. Somebody brought that up in the last meeting. We don't expect you to have an idea on every one of them. Academic challenge, the first one is about the portfolio, thinking differently about our programs, offering new degree programs, and the third bullet is non-degree programs. The facility master plan, partnerships, but ensuring that even like we might pursue things like virtual employees, especially for IT, especially for telehealth, especially for HR, finance. These people can live in Chicago and be our employees, but we got to find a way to uniquely make them part of our our community, because it's getting much harder to bring people and require them in person. Now, some of the things like grounds and, custodial and things like that are different, but there are opportunities to become a virtual workforce. I'm even working on a study with that with this group called Coupa HR. All right, that's enough of me talking. I'm going to change gears now. These are the 3 buckets. If you go to this link, you can take your phone and you can put it right up to the QR code. If you've done that before, you kind of take a picture of it and it should lead you to the survey. Or Ethan has probably put in the link for the survey in chat, so you can go to that and just click on it on your computer. We're going to take about 5 minutes and let you just give any idea you can think of. No idea is a bad idea. Bigger ideas are better in each of these categories. And let me know, just thumbs up, is it working for some of you? Have you got the connection? Do you, with your phone on the QR code right on the screen, or do the link through your computer? I got head shaking. What's wrong? Is it not working? Did you try the phone right up to the screen and take a picture of the QR code? It should say, or you want to go to this survey? Has anybody had luck yet? Okay, Laura's in. Michael, I'm going user error. Can we go to a backup of just have you take that link from chat and paste it into your computer? That should get you there too.
Were these questions in the survey that some of us have already completed?
This is a different ask. So some of the questions, some of the ideas were presented. The ask of you, right? We never asked everybody, tell us the initiatives to get it done. We asked, do you agree with these or disagree? So this is a different cut at it. Some of these ideas you might have seen before, but what we're asking you now in that content box is, here's what you need to do to accomplish that. That's a new ask, Grant. If that makes sense.
I sort of did that in some of my answers in the comment boxes.
Perfect. Hey, if we got it, we're digesting those too.
Okay. I had long comment boxes.
Ethan might remember reading those. We do an exercise called content coding, where we take an idea and we break it down into unique thoughts and put it into buckets and measure the frequency. The rest of you doing okay? You got in, Michael, through the computer? Thank you. I think we lost Ross. Here he comes. He's back. Nancy, you in? Great. The reason we do this is when I facilitate, it's much better to get everyone's individual inputs before we get into groupthink or run out of time.
I can't get the link to work.
Is that Grant?
Yeah.
You try cutting and pasting or just clicking from chat?
Clicking.
Maybe try cut and paste.
Okay. Make sure somebody puts that comment of required internships in the first 2 years of their experience. I really like that one. And what a terrific suggestion from alumni, because we would get so much help. Especially if you make them paid internships.
They only need $15 an hour, right, Ethan? I'm assuming teacher 2 is in the education field.
Speaking of branding, I like the cupola beside your head.
You're talking to me?
Yes, up beside you. It's very nice. That means Chapel Hill to a great many people.
It does.
Strong branding.
It's on the logo. It's everywhere.
Exactly. Dick Cashwell mean anything to you?
Does what?
Dick Cashwell.
It rings a bell.
He was dean of admissions at Chapel Hill for a long, long time.
I wish he was dean of admissions and a good friend of yours right now, because Nick's number one choice, he's in 8th grade, is UNC.
Okay, good.
So the person I've done a bunch of strategic plan projects for at admissions went to UVA. So now I'm starting all over with any connections to the admissions office.
Mine went to school in that state. I had 2 boys who went to Davidson.
Oh, what a great place.
Great place. 2 daughters-in-law.
I did my MBA, my PhD here. My wife did her undergrad and her master's of accounting. So we got 4-time legacy. I hope that plays in a little. All right, I'll give everybody 30 seconds and then we'll just have some open dialogue to wrap up your comments.
Our son went to Duke, so I really can't talk to you.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that institution.
I didn't think so. He wasn't. He couldn't even, when he was applying to law school, he could not bring himself to even request an application from UNC Law School.
Yeah, Roger that. That happens. But we do have crossover people who do an undergrad here and a master's there, or vice versa.
That's like treason.
There's a Robertson scholarship that allows you to get a degree from both institutions. It's a full scholarship.
But if you apply for a job with that, and the guy is the interviewer is from Duke or UNC, he ain't even going to talk to you.
You do lose the enthusiasm. All right, we got about 6 minutes left, so we'll just open this up. I'm still dying to know who teacher 2 is and what she does.
I had trouble sending a question to the chat, and
Okay.
I just throw it out there about any discussion about pre-professional programs. Like, well, I know there's no such thing as pre-law. People talk about pre-law all the time, like pre-med. There's no such thing. But the point is, if somebody thinks they want to go to law school or med school or dental school or any pre-professional, is there any thought or talk or way of maybe expanding attraction to preparation for those?
I love that. I love that idea. And why couldn't you have that? Look, you have control of the names of your programs. An academic major is typically 36 hours. We could even make general majors. Like at UNC, there's a business administration major. And we have hundreds and hundreds of students come in. That's their major. But then they have an area of emphasis. And that's completely controllable by us. We make up the sequence, we make up the track. We can revamp things. We can just have a couple general majors and then go with areas of emphasis. Maybe it wouldn't require us to have 18 departments. Maybe we could be more efficient with it and just have these very specialized tracks and put it into our marketing, and have some partnerships with law schools and places that.
But how practical is that when there's nobody in the neighborhood? I mean, I can understand if you were located in Washington or New York or Boston or something, there are thousands of schools. But for Marietta, the nearest law school is in Columbus or Pittsburgh.
I assume people. I would assume people want to make a move at one point from.
Yeah, and I think we actually have a partnership already with somebody.
Well, we've had them.
Yeah.
We've had them for years. Years ago, when I was there, sometime around when Moses left Egypt, we had engineers couldn't, other than petroleum, they'd go on to Western Reserve or someplace. We had working relationships with other schools for those kinds of things. But what I was going to suggest is that if we have some emphasis on, I mean, there are people who genuinely know when they get to college, they want to go to med school, they want to go to law school, whatever, that we have some kind of expansion of internships. Well, even in Marietta, there are lawyers there, there are doctors there are hospitals. You mentioned that before. Get them started with that stuff sophomore year. Place them in the hospital to clean bedpans or whatever.
I love it. I love it. Career pre-professional tracks. And
yeah, I think we do have that. I got to stop you here. And most of this group has another meeting they're backing right up to.
That's right. Yes.
So we want to have a few questions.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah. Hopefully you put all your ideas into the survey. Does anyone have any big thoughts they want to share? I was told, do not keep you past your meeting. And I have a college coach meeting with my son and his college coach right now. So anything else on your mind?
Now, I'm just enjoying seeing some of my contemporaries and how young they look. Ross is shaking his head.
You use that word loosely. Any other suggestions from anybody? Yeah, Jenny.
Can I go on? Because I started this thing and somehow I pushed the wrong button and I lost the thing. Can I go into the survey now?
Yes.
The link?
Yes, the survey will be kept open. Yep.
Okay.
Beyond this call.
I have something, and it's not I'm not contributing anything, but as usual. But I happen to know a lot about the AGB, and I am glad that the college reached out to such a stellar organization. And I'm really happy you're there, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross, for the compliment on my organization and the trust in me. Leslie has gone to a bunch of my webinars, and we've been in touch for a while, so it's good to be.
Well, you're not an organization for profit, and I think the college made exactly the right move. So thank you.
And he's just been really helpful at a time where we just need a little bit more guidance in focusing our change efforts. I'm just going to ask all of you as leaders and have a lot of voice to a lot of alumni that you step up and continue to help and support this effort. And, challenge us where you can. We'll continue to share information. If you want more detail, let us know. But we really appreciate the support of all this alumni group. You've been just great leaders and great supporters. So we're continue to ask for that. And we're really thrilled with the AGB team helping us. And they've got some good knowledge of what's going on out there.
Tough challenge, totally doable. Let's do it in a positive way. There will be resistors on campus. We have to do everything we can to listen to them, to hear them, to explain what we're trying to do. But there's no way everybody's going to be happy with what we do. There will be trade-offs and there will be unhappy people, but generally we should be optimistic about building a better future. Well, thank you all very much. I can't wait to read your comments. We'll share them back with our teams on campus. I'm always available, pfriga@agb.org. You can find you can just go to my website, paulfriga.com. All my articles. I'm easy to find. So if you have any follow-ups, let me know. But you guys have a great meeting, and really appreciate your time on a Friday, and have a great weekend.